Okay. Welcome, everyone, to our 1 p.m. session, all about Local Law 55, the challenges it presents, and how automation can help. Before I jump in, I will introduce myself and Stephanie, of course, but just some quick housekeeping. So obviously, there is a click for audio button, so make sure you click that so you can hear us. Also, we have a Q&A panel on the right-hand corner of the site. Please enter questions as we go along. Stephanie and I will be happy to answer them at the end of the conversation. But again, please pepper those conversations as we go along. So first and foremost, my name is Amit Alumi. I am SiteCompli's VP of Business Development. And I have the pleasure to introduce Stephanie Cardello, who is Director of Compliance at FirstService Residential. Stephanie, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we can jump into what this session's all about.
Sure. So again, my name is Stephanie Cardello. I run the compliance department here at FirstService Residential. I've been with the company going on 11 years and started in property management and kind of worked my way up and have been running the compliance department for about 9 years. We handle all of the regulatory compliance for our portfolio, so that's rental, our co-ops, condos, and we also handle transitions, so any buildings that are transitioning in or transitioning out. So we are definitely very busy with this continuing change in the landscape of compliance. So very excited to be here with you today and everyone else to talk about Local Law 55.
And just as a refresher, how many units are under management in your portfolio?
So yeah, we just did the count. We're about a little over 74,000 units total.
Right. Needless to say, a very, very large portfolio makes things a lot more complicated. So great. So today's session is all about, conquering the Local Law 55 challenge using smart automation. So just as a quick refresher, Local Law 55 was a law that was enacted and put into place back in January of 2019. And it really requires landlords of buildings with 3 or more apartments or of any size, assuming a tenant has asthma in any of those units, that they take steps to keep those tenants' homes free of pest and mold. And one of the really big, operational function of that is to inspect every single apartment unit and the building common area once a year for things like cockroaches, or rodent infestations, mold, and the conditions that can lead to any of these hazards, which is a pretty daunting task for a portfolio of any size, right? But for 75,000 plus units, you can imagine how challenging that is to be able to get into each unit, capture this relevant information, and each and every year. So that is what we wanted to talk with Stephanie today on how FirstService is handling that and the challenges around dealing with Local Law 55. So first and foremost, we can just hop right. Oh, so again, please enter your questions on the right-hand corner, but I have some questions prepared for Stephanie as we go along. So first and foremost, what were your first thoughts when you heard about this new requirement and the impact it would have on your day-to-day operations?
So, I mean, we kind of looked at it the same way we look at a lot of these regulations that come about fairly quickly. And realize this was going to be a very difficult thing for us to be able to do and comply with for our full portfolio. So we wanted to get a good understanding of the law. Our in-house corporate counsel took a look at it. We also reached out to obviously our support systems, SiteCompli being one of them, to try to figure out if there was a good way for us to automate the process. When we initially heard about it, we wanted to see if there was something we can do internally to try to track these inspections. We have such a diverse portfolio, not just in it being rental, co-op, condo, but just in the type of buildings we manage. Some have 10 units, some have 1,000 units. Just trying to figure out how would we get a handle on all of this. And it just seemed like a very daunting task to us. It was not something that would be successful paper-based. We figured that out pretty quickly. It was not something that we were going to be able to do. So finding an automated electronic solution was really most ideal for us. And luckily, when we reached out to SiteCompli, you all had already had a module built out for it. And we were really excited to be able to use that for
yeah. Yeah, totally. And of course, you're referring to InCheck, which is, the tool that really streamlines the way, work is done within your buildings. And we understand that Local Law 55 is one of those major challenges. What, prior to Local Law 55, I mean, how much activity were you having within units? Or were you trying to get into apartment units in general, or was it kind of a mixed bag?
So we were our company. When we were dealing with annual safety notices in particular, we were trying to get in to do inspections annually, to just do a quick once over to make sure window guards were installed if necessary, just to do a quick once over to see if there were any potential lead issues. So it's something that we were trying to do. And again, to talk about paper some more, which I think nowadays, like everyone's least favorite, method for record keeping. We had these exhibits, these long documents that we would, print out and bring to the supers and resident managers. And, we were trying to use that. It was okay in some situations, but again, it was very difficult being able to do that annually. So it was something that we wanted to be able to do it and to do that better. And this kind of tied into Local Law 55 tied into some of the things that we were already trying to accomplish. So doing apartment inspections wasn't new to us, especially for rentals. When we have apartment turnovers, you're inside the apartments anyway. But for the club condo division, it was definitely it's a little bit trickier to do those annual inspections.
Totally makes sense. Great. Okay, great. So you reach out to SiteCompli. You understand that there's a potential tool that can help you via InCheck. So what was the building out what you wanted to happen for each inspection, and like the steps that were critical to be included within those inspections? How did that dynamic play out, and where you were able to get to the end product that would meet your needs?
Yeah, so when we first took a look at the module, I mean, fortunately, it checked all the boxes for Local Law 55, which was obviously at a minimum what we needed to have happen. So I was excited and very relieved that, when I reached out to SiteCompli, this was not only something that wasn't new to you all, but something that you had planned for and had built out. So when we looked at the items that were in Local Law 55, again, it was a lot of what we wanted to look at when we were inside apartments, but there were a number of things that we are needing to look at regularly anyway. Carbon monoxide detectors, making sure that those are installed and that they're working. Again, checking for window guards, making sure that if we have children where window guards are required, that they're installed and in good shape. Taking a quick look at lead inspection. So there were a number of things that we were needing to do annually. The bed bug filing for HPD is another great one. They were kind of one-offs that were a little all over the place again, and we were trying to do this record keeping whenever a staff member was inside the apartment. But we were able to customize our the module for 55 for us, where we could just add all of those items in. So this way we can do a formal once-a-year inspection, and when the staff was in there looking for the Local Law 55 items, they could easily just quickly check the carbon monoxide detector and the smoke detector, and hey, is the window guard installed or is it not? Do we need to repair it? Sure. That was a really easy addition and made life a lot easier for the supers and for the handyman, and also for us, because now we had an electronic log of when this was all done. It's done at one time, so it's a lot more efficient, and we were working smarter, not harder, which is ideal. So
yeah,
it was great.
That is, we love that. I think, as we were developing InCheck and thinking about the challenges that our clients face on a day-to-day basis, it really is not only about giving them tools in the field to capture critical information, but to make them that much more efficient and optimize the time they spent in an apartment unit, right? So we love that, right? Taking those critical things that need to be captured for Local Law 55, but simultaneously, while we're in the unit, capturing things like the window guard or carbon monoxide, testing, the pieces of equipment to ensure that everything is in order and you don't have to make multiple visits. So that's great. So you worked with the SiteCompli team to build out these modules. Obviously, I'm sure our team was giving you some guidance on what needs to be done, and then you were able to introduce your own protocols. Now we need to train a lot of people across your large portfolio. So tell me how the training of this solution, getting people to comply to your new protocols and processes, and what that dynamic was like.
So luckily for us, we've been partnered with SiteCompli for a long time. I mean, for as long as I've been in compliance, and I think the partnership started right before that. So our team is accustomed to doing training with SiteCompli. So it was really figuring out a good way to train everyone. Where this was different from the standard SiteCompli platform, where our internal managers and assistant managers are using it. This was now trickling down to staff members. So that was unique. And also trying to push everyone toward this electronic method was also new. So what we did was had several training sessions with our managers. So all of the property managers, assistant managers went through training. We did several of those in person. Once everyone was trained and up to speed and comfortable with the system, and we made sure everyone was able to get the apps on their phone or tablet or whatever they were using, we then did training for the staff members. And what we did for them, we scheduled weekly sessions. So staff members could jump in at any time. And we did this for quite a while. I mean, it was, I want to say 2 to 3 months long, where we had a standing appointment. I want to say it was like Tuesdays and Thursdays for about an hour, where staff members could come in, and we made sure that everyone registered for at least one session. But what we found is that a lot of people would start to use the InCheck, and they would have a question here or there. So they would pop into another training session. And that seemed to work really well, because it gave people the flexibility to train when they needed to train. We had started talking with SiteCompli so early on in the release really of this new regulation, that we had the flexibility to be able to take the time to train properly. And I think that was the key to being successful. Everyone really needed to be comfortable with using InCheck. And luckily, with the time that we live in now, with these really awesome smartphones that everyone has, it was super simple. We had instructions for how they download the app, and then we had all these training sessions for how they use the app. And the feedback that we got was just that it was very intuitive. So it was a long game in terms of training, but it was very successful, I think, all around.
Great, yeah, and I think for any existing SiteCompli client, they will understand our commitment to being a resource, making sure the team is onboarded properly, using our tools, and getting the most out of that. And I think we can actually show an example of what these these inspections look like. Just as a reminder, with the InCheck functionality, there is that mobile piece where the team can actually capture the information via the mobile app. They don't need to be tethered to their desk. And here's an example of this inspection. Let me see if I can restart that, where these cards can be fully customized, right? So whether it's specific to local law 55 or capturing 6 other elements while they're in the unit, it allows that information to easily be captured, photos to be taken, notes to be added, and then it gives Stephanie and her team that visibility back in the main office of exactly what's happening, which is pretty tremendous, considering Stephanie's not even based in New York. She's based in North Carolina, right? So
it's true.
And then, from Stephanie's perspective, as I mentioned, this is a sample of, what she would be seeing. Just bear with me here. Let me share this. She would have an overview of all of her inspections as they're being performed in each unit, and can easily, understand which units still need to be worked upon, which properties, and if there's any potential issues there. So
yeah, and this was key. This was key for us, because the unique thing about FirstService is that we have a dedicated compliance team. So we want to have a higher level overview of what's going on with the full portfolio. So we were able to, on the back end, look at how the inspections were going. Are there portfolios that are having a harder time than others? And this level of oversight was very helpful to us, especially in the first year as we were navigating using InCheck for the first time, and also making sure that we were complying with local law 55.
Yep, totally. So you work with the team, or we worked with our team, we built out these protocols, we were able to roll out and train many people across your organization. And I think it's worth noting, if you want to talk a little bit more, who are the players when it comes to this? Is it your property management staff? Is it the building supers? Is it maintenance people? Is it a mix of everyone? I think that's an important note as well.
Yeah, so for us, it's quite a mix. Like I said before, our portfolio is so diverse that there are, we have some buildings where we may have a part-time super and the property manager's doing the inspections, or the assistant property manager is helping the property manager do the inspections. And then we have some very large buildings. I know specifically with the rental portfolio, we had several accounts where they literally have like maintenance teams that are assigned to different floors and different lines. So it really varied across the portfolio. And that's why we wanted to make sure we had a very comprehensive training approach. So this way, if a super has a question or a handyman has a question, they can escalate up to the manager and the manager can say, well, yeah, this is how the system works. Or if they have trouble, they can escalate up to a member of my team or to me. So we made sure everyone was trained. We opened it up to everyone because we really didn't know. It was hard to understand when this, first was released, like what is the real time commitment like for these inspections? It's supposed to be a relatively quick visual, but is that going to take 5 minutes or is it going to take an hour? You just didn't know. So we wanted to make sure that everyone was trained properly. So depending on what it actually looked like being inside the apartment, time commitment wise, we had the ability to have everyone trained up from the ground up to make sure that we could fit the needs of the different clients and make sure that we were able to comply with this regulation by the end of the year. So it really was a bit of a mix for us.
Yeah, totally. I would imagine. So I think that ladders up to like my next question quite well. So now, what are they like? Let's get into the nitty gritty and then like the nuances of like how you actually roll this out. Do you have a set date that these inspections go out for each building? Is it on a rolling, scale? Like, how are you deploying this effort on an annual basis across such a large portfolio?
So typically, we try to start this off, first into second quarter of the year. COVID has really thrown a monkey wrench into everything because we have not, this year in particular, we haven't started the inspections yet. And it's been because there have been safety issues with going into the apartments. And really you've had situations where staff members are only comfortable going in an emergency situation. So we're now having to try to stack these inspections as best as we can based upon the time commitment with COVID. But on a normal year, what we did last year and what we'll do in 2021, pending that things are looking safe to do so, we usually will start first quarter, at least prepping for it. Like let's make sure all of the buildings are enrolled. You start to get the workflows assigned. And we like to stagger the actual inspections a little bit later. I find that the prep work tends to take the most time, just getting everything lined up administratively, and then actually doing the inspections tend to be a little bit easier. So we like to include as much as we can because the annual safety notices, which we partner with SiteCompli on, gives us some critical data points that do require follow-up. So it's great to be able to understand from a safety notice perspective what apartments require follow-up. Do we need window guards installed in some? Is a lead paint inspection required for others? So we want to collect that data first. And then this way you can again fold it in and really maximize your efforts and do the inspection all at one time. So that's at least what we try to do. We want to avoid the amount of time that we're in the apartment. And it's not just from a health perspective, which obviously now I think everyone's much more aware of, but from a time perspective and also an inconvenience factor. Tenants, shareholders, owners do not like having people in their apartments all the time checking in on things. If it drives them crazy when 1 week they're checking a smoke detector and the next week they're back in install a window guard. You just think, well, why didn't you just do this all at once?
Correct.
So we try to make it so that information that we collect from safety notice season, whatever follow-up action items are required, we can do that at the time of local law 55. So that tends to be the second, really second half of the year. So that's at least what works for us. It's different for everyone. I want to stress, we have such a large portfolio. It takes us a long time to make sure that we can comply with all of these regulations for every account. For buildings that have smaller portfolios, it may be different for them, what works for them. They also may have different people performing the inspection. So that does impact, how much time do you have to invest in this? How many people are you training? So it's a very fluid thing based upon your portfolio.
Yeah, I do love the concept of knocking out these local law 55 inspections upon local law 1, request, like I need a window guard repair or installed. While I'm there, may as well perform it. Another thing for the audience to think about, because I know we had just finished the local law 1 conversation prior to our session, even when you're doing these manual follow-ups for units who haven't responded, it could be another opportunity while you're there to capture some of that local law 55 inspection. And the InCheck tool will allow you to be incredibly flexible, where you can do it on an as-needed basis, or we can set those things to be scheduled on a recurring basis. So, okay, so I heard you mention COVID, obviously major impacts across all functions of property management. Curious to know, whether it's COVID related or not, what changes or adjustments have been made to this particular workflow since you've rolled it out across the portfolio?
I mean, again, this year the law is so new. We had one really good year to just roll it out, and then 2020 happened. So with COVID, it's been different because we've been focusing more on the rental portfolio over condo. And the way that our company interpreted the law is that this applies to all buildings. I know some companies have felt that it's only for rentals, and we've really looked at this as, we have to go in all these apartments regardless at some point throughout the year. Complying with 55 for all of our building types is just, we feel the prudent thing to do. But for this year, we've had to focus really more on the rental portfolio. I think, we haven't had to adjust much, which has been great, because we had this very collaborative discussion when we first started this back in 2019. And I think had we not rolled in a lot of these other inspections that we wanted to do while we were inside the apartments, I would have certainly wanted to add that in future years. But we haven't really adjusted too much. We did, when we first started this process in terms of internal workflow, we wanted the resident managers and supers to do the inspections. That has had to expand just because of we realized we had a lot more that needed to be done. It was taking longer to have one person perform an inspection for 1,000 units was not working. So we've had to adjust in terms of that. But the actual InCheck system itself, we did not make any adjustments yet. But I feel good knowing that we're able to if we need to. And if there are new local laws that come about where we can, again, fold it into this one-time annual inspection, that's what we'll do. Yeah.
I think that's great that you didn't have to make any major changes on the fly. InCheck is built to do that. That's the beauty of it. It can easily change a protocol or an inspection or add something, remove something. I guess, again, it ladders very nicely to my next question of what do you think the next big initiative that InCheck would, how you would apply InCheck across your portfolio, whether it be around local law 1 or just general kind of, preventive maintenance routines. How else do you envision InCheck being used for the FirstService portfolio?
So that's been a great question. It's a great question. It's been a really interesting thing for us because we have been talking with SiteCompli about InCheck for quite some time. We have got several other things going on in the organization that really needed some automation. So one of them being transitions. Like I mentioned in the introduction, my team also manages transitions, and that's relatively new to my department. I want to say we took this over maybe two or 3 years ago. And what I found is that all of the management companies, we work very well together. We all understand what we're going through. It's important to all of us to be able to be as helpful as possible. But the amount of emails and documents that you are sending back and forth throughout a transition it's remarkable. And I did not understand how inefficient in some ways it could be when you're emailing back and forth. I mean, you could need bylaws, and that takes 5 emails because someone's requesting it from you, you're requesting it from the manager's sending it back, you're then saving it. It's just like, oh my gosh, this is 6 steps for one document. There's got to be a better way to do this. So we have been talking with InCheck, I want to say maybe the last 2 years about it. As soon as transitions came in, I thought, I've got a problem I need to solve. And I reached right out to SiteCompli, and we had been building out really a module for transitions, which has it's more or less complete. And you talk about flexibility. There have been several things we needed to add into that. So the sexual harassment training has been one, making sure we're collecting, confirmation that the FISP certificates are posted or that the energy grades have been posted. We're adding that into our transition checklist. And the neat thing about InCheck is internally, we can have several different departments that are accessing that information, uploading documentation, writing notes. It sends a notification via email to those that are involved in the transition so they know something has been added. This is what's been posted. Go and take a look. And it cuts down on the amount of time that you're communicating back and forth. And it also provides a really neat checklist for what it is that you need during a transition. So again, it's something that's relatively new to us. We just finished, and I say finished, building this out, maybe 2 months ago. But it's been very exciting. I'm hoping that we can continue to pilot this and maybe it's something that other management companies will be interested in doing as well. Separately, aside from that, we've had some team members that worked on a weekly inspection, building inspection, and a monthly building inspection, especially to work on during COVID. As everyone knows, everyone was cooped up, especially those in New York, for months. And it was very difficult for managers to get out to their buildings. So what was created was a weekly checklist for the superintendents to go in and just make sure that they're still looking at things. You've got to check the boiler room and make sure you're checking outside. Does everything look like everything is in order? Is there any issue? You see any sidewalk problems that would require repair? Like, what do things look like? So that was rolled out maybe about a month or so ago. And then we did a more detailed monthly inspection for the property managers to complete. And the nice thing about all of this is that the training for InCheck that we did with 55, the processes are so similar. It was easy for them to jump into the rest of it. It did not require a lot of training. And, we started with InCheck back in 2019. I like to say we're a very tech savvy firm. As you mentioned before, I'm not based in New York. I've been a remote employee for 10 years, literally. It's been a decade. And we have a lot of technology in place to make it successful for our, not only our internal members, but also for our staff members. And going electronic with this stuff, I think, was a big concern for everyone. People were freaked out, especially about how superintendents and resident managers were going to do without having like a paper log where they could note things. And everyone did beautifully with it. It was so intuitive. So we rolled out Local Law 55 shortly thereafter, transitions checklist, and then building inspection. So we are huge fans of InCheck. We love the flexibility of it. I think that's the biggest, that's what draws us to it more so than anything. You have to continue to be innovative. That's how you stay sharp in this business. And the partnership with SiteCompli and the introduction of InCheck has allowed us to do that. And especially during these times, I feel like we've been very successful.
Yeah, I do love the idea of being hyper-focused on rolling out a very specific initiative with InCheck, like Local Law 55, creating those protocols, those inspections, those processes, and then training and getting the adoption. Once you are able to complete that successfully, it is much, much easier to then expand the capabilities of InCheck because you've created that kind of best practice. So instead of trying to do it all at once, which can be very overwhelming.
No, you need to come into it. You need to. It's funny because Dan Wartzel, our president, I overheard him say something. I don't know, 9 years ago. It was when I was new with the company, and he was talking to someone. My desk was outside of his office, and I heard him giving someone advice that just said, if you have a problem, come with solutions, and then based upon those solutions, you can figure out how do I get there. And with InCheck, you need to know what your problem is. What does the solution look like? And then you can build InCheck to get you there. But you need to have a clear vision of what you're trying to get to. And that was, I think, for us, the apartment inspections were the building inspections were a little bit easier to get to because InCheck was already built out for the apartment inspections. We just had to change the labeling. The transitions piece was, it was customized from the ground up. We knew what the problem was. We knew where we wanted to be. And then we had to build, we had to modify the system to get us there. And again, it was a labor of love, but well worth it.
Yeah, and we're committed to that as well. We love it. We love when clients bring us innovative ideas or problems that they have that we can innovate on to help solve. Because if it's good for the FirstServices of the world, then it's good for the rest of the industry. And we're committed to that as well, to help with our implementation team that's head by Jessica, our client success team, to take as much load of that process off your plate. But we need to understand the destination, and that's always a great kind of piece from the client to allow us to get there. So my last question for you, and then we can open it up to the audience. What advice would you give a management team who is starting to plan their local law 55 annual inspections today?
So I think the sooner the better. I can't emphasize enough. I've been doing this long enough to understand that I may think something will take, a certain amount of time to complete, and it always takes longer, especially when you're rolling out something for the first time. So you want to make sure, even though all of us, all the different management companies have such different portfolios, what our internal structures look like vary company to company. But know your clients, know your portfolio, understand what your limitations are, what your strengths are, and get started on this as soon as possible. I know for us, it was interesting because you hear about all these new local laws. They're coming about all the time. And it's easy to push the snooze button on it and say, I'll deal with this next month, or I'll deal with this in 3 months. But 3 months shows up really quickly. I mean, we're days away from November 1st, which is crazy. So you want to get started on it early, and just make sure you're understanding you need to be flexible with these new local laws. 55 in particular, it takes time. Also, I mean, one thing we didn't talk about that I want to mention is you have to notify the tenants and the shareholders and owners that you're going to be coming in and doing these inspections. So we also, especially when we started it the first year, we wanted to make sure we gave ample notice, let people know that this was going to be happening, why it was happening, who's requiring it. And then you have to give the staff time to notify, them of specifically when they'll be in the apartment. So you want to have a ton of runway ahead of you when you get this started. So the sooner the better. And use your resources. That's the other thing. I think there's so much going on. I don't pretend to, I don't pretend to know any of this stuff. I know what I know from doing this, but there are so many new regulations that it is so difficult to stay on top of this. Use your resources and use your partners. And I email our team at SiteCompli. I emailed them yesterday. I was off yesterday, and I had a question about a commercial compliance regulation. And I sent an email, and they got back to me right away. So use your resources and get as much information as you can and as you need to make informed decisions and processes for your company.
Yeah, and I can comfortably speak for obviously our organization, SiteCompli, and many of the sponsored companies for InCheck. We all view ourselves as extensions of our clients' teams as consultants. So we encourage you to turn to us when there is a question in need and ask. And we want to be part of the conversation when it comes to problem solving and giving good, bringing good ideas to the table. So. Awesome. So why don't we have about 10 minutes or so. So why don't we open it up to the questions from the audience? We have a couple in here. I encourage you guys to ask more if you have them. So why don't we we can start with Carol. Does your staff do one local law 55 inspection and then separate annual inspections, or are they combined? I think you answered this, but why don't you give it another go and kind of that clarity?
Yeah, we combine them. And I think that that's the most efficient thing to do. So rather, in prior years before 55 came out, we were kind of piecing this stuff together as best as we can. We would try to get into the apartments after we had the annual safety notice information. And then, again, at the end of the year, if we needed to. But with 55, we do it all at once. We try to collect as much data as we can at one time. And again, this lessens the load on your staff members, which is so crucial because they do not, I think it's stressful for them to have to do these inspections. When they need to go into an apartment to do a repair, that they do it, but to have to go in and check someone's apartment multiple times a year is not what anyone wants to be doing. I wouldn't want someone in my home more than once a year snooping around. So we try to combine it all. We do local law 55. The local law 55 has become our annual apartment inspections. It encompasses everything.
Great. Neil asks, is local law 55 delayed due to COVID-19?
Yeah, I mean, from a regulatory standpoint, no. And I was surprised to hear that. I think as many others were, we've been speaking with Rebney about that for the last, we really picked up this conversation with them within the last 2 months to say, well, hey, like, can we push this back? And I think HPD feels that with lead and a lot of the indoor allergens, that is a life safety issue. So they want the inspections done. So it is not, from a legality standpoint, has not been delayed. We have had to adjust, just because you also have to, you have to keep in mind, it's a really fine balancing act, making sure that your staff members are safe and comfortable with what they're doing, making sure that residents are comfortable. So for us, we've had to adjust due to COVID, but from a regulatory standpoint, as of what I heard, about 3 weeks ago from Rebney, it was not delayed.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's important to note that, for those of you in the audience who have not subscribed to our blog, we will, we have close ties with the different city agencies and update, anytime a new regulation is passed or changed. And obviously during these times, during the pandemic, there's been some impact on regulations and what happens, and we've been communicating that out. So we are a resource. We're going to communicate. The local law 55 is not delayed. And I think Stephanie, hit upon the reasons why. So Kia asks, and this may be for me more so than you, Stephanie, is InCheck access separate from SiteCompli? So InCheck is a separate application, and I am happy, or my team is happy, to tell you all about it. But for our SiteCompli subscribers, if you do opt into InCheck, it is an overlay. It's one solution, and it's directly integrated and tied together. So it's not automatically included in your SiteCompli subscription, but if you do opt in, it is one solution, so you're not logging into multiple platforms. You can reach out to me directly or to anyone on our team, our support or sales group from the website, and I'm happy to provide additional information to anyone who's interested in learning more. So is there any, I don't think we have any more questions. Maybe give it a couple seconds if something pops in. Otherwise, Stephanie, thank you so much for taking the time. We know you are an incredibly busy person with compliance management over 75,000 units. So, thank you again for taking the time. Thank you all for the audience for joining and listening in and for your questions. Highly encourage everyone to attend additional sessions later in this afternoon. I know we're talking about Local Law 97, Local Law 152. I encourage everyone to go to our, networking lounge, to the vendor expo, our partnership expo, to talk with some of the other experts that could give you some really good guidance and advice around a lot of these local laws, and enjoy the rest of your RealFocus. And we hope to talk to you all soon. Thank you again, Stephanie.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.